Hello, everyone. Today, let's step far, far back. So far that the dust beneath your feet feels older than language, and the moonlight casts its silver on a world still learning how to build its gods. Today, we travel not through monuments, but through kitchens, those smoky, forgotten spaces where history often hides. This isn't the tale of a pharaoh or a priest. This is your story. And in your story, you were never meant to wear gold. Drop a comment with where you're watching from. And what time is it? It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe pull the blanket a bit higher. The world will wait, but you're already halfway to another time. You were born close to the banks of the river, the Nile, whose moods shaped not only the soil, but the rhythm of every breath your village took. It was not a grand place. Your house was made of mud brick, cracked at the edges like old skin. The roof leaked during storms, and in the winter, cold winds slipped through the slats like whispers. But it was home, warm, alive, filled with noise. Goats bleating, children arguing, mothers grinding grain between stones. Your earliest memory? It might have been the scent of onions frying. Not the kind of crisp, modern sizzle. No, it was thick, smoky, mingled with ash and earth. You remember the way your mother bent over the hearth, her back curved like the crescent moon. You didn't understand why her hands were always burned, or why she never sat down. But you learned. You learned that food was not love. It was survival. And for women like you, cooking wasn't a hobby. It was fate, written not in stars, but in calloused palms and smoke-blackened walls. The men around you, fathers, brothers, cousins, spoke of gods and taxes, fields and fish. But you watched your mother crush coriander with the base of her palm and knew that power could also smell like cumin. And there were rules. Even back then, a girl doesn't speak at the table. A girl learns to stir before she can count. A girl understands by the age of 6 that the kitchen is where she'll spend most of her life and possibly lose it. No one asked what you wanted. That wasn't cruel. It was just the Nile's way. The river gives and it takes. And you were meant to give. So you watched. You mimicked. You got burned. You cried quietly. You peeled onions until your fingers shriveled from the acid. And when your mother fell sick from the dust in her lungs, you stepped in without a word. One morning, still rubbing the sleep from your eyes, you were the one who lit the fire. And that changed everything. The kitchen was not a room. It was a corner of the yard, sometimes shielded from the wind, sometimes not. There was no table, no metal cutlery, just stones for grinding, baskets for storage, and a fire pit that never stayed lit on the first try. You learned to wake before the sky bled orange, before the roosters stirred, before the stars surrendered, because bread takes time. And in Egypt, bread was life. You weren't just baking. You were praying in your own way. Kneading the dough was a chant. Let it rise. Let it not rot. Let it not be too salty. Let the overseer's wife not spit it out. And yet, each morning you hoped. Hoped for quiet. Hoped for a breeze. Hoped that today you wouldn't drop anything. Wouldn't be blamed for the sour milk or the broken amphora. Your hands became tools, stronger than the wooden paddles you used to stir. Your knuckles ached. Your nails were always blackened. But when your bread rose perfectly, when it cracked just slightly at the top, golden and steaming, you felt something close to joy. But it was fleeting, because someone always wanted more. You see, in this version of Egypt, yours, not theirs, there are no tombs filled with treasure. Only shelves with pots that chip too easily, herbs that dry too fast, rats that sneak in when you turn your back. Your work was invisible unless it went wrong. No one praised the smoothness of your lentil stew, but if a grain of sand found its way into the priest's bowl, there would be consequences. Silence was safety. Perfection was a shield. And yet, you found moments. When your younger sister giggled after stealing a fig. When the neighbor brought honeycomb as thanks for feeding her child during the floods. When, on rare afternoons, you were allowed to sit and just listen. To the wind. To the gurgle of the clay pot. To your own breath, steady and real. These were luxuries no coin could buy. Moments you tucked into your memory like dried dates in linen. You were not alone, even if it felt like it. Other women shared your path. You whispered over fire pits, swapped techniques for pickling onions, mourned quietly when one of you vanished, married off, sold, or simply gone. No one questioned. You just kept stirring. Sometimes an old woman would come, wrinkled, nearly blind, but with stories. Of pharaohs who choked on figs, of temples where the cooks wore jewelry. You never believed her fully, but you listened. Because hope, even ridiculous, is sweeter than salt. And in these stories, you imagined another life. Maybe in another kitchen, one with shade. Maybe a house with tiled floors. Maybe a job where no one shouted. But that was fantasy. Reality was this. You were a cook. You would remain a cook. And if you were lucky, your daughter would inherit your place, not your pain. Do you remember the day the wind carried ash into the courtyard? You were 13. The fire had gone out. The stew was undercooked. The master's wife had guests. And you, still thin, still with that soft dream behind your eyes, forgot to stir the lentils. The smell turned sour. They didn't hit you. That would have left marks. Instead, they made you eat it. All of it. And while you did, your tears mixed with the broth. No one spoke, no one helped, but you learned. Not about lentils, about silence, about endurance, about what it means to be needed, but not wanted. Still, the years passed. The river rose and fell. Seasons blurred. Your body changed. Your back curved. Your hands grew coarse, but your instincts sharpened. You could smell burnt grain before it caught flame. You could slice onions with your eyes closed. You could feed 20 without blinking. And once, just once, someone thanked you. A guest from another province. He tasted your stew. Barley, coriander, duck bones simmered for hours. He paused, looked at you, and said, "This tastes like a memory." You didn't respond. But later that night, as you lay on the floor, wrapped in your linen cloth, you whispered the words to yourself, over and over, like a hymn. This tastes like a memory. Maybe that's what you'd become. Not a name carved in stone, but a memory. Warm, fragrant, necessary. Before dawn, the world still belongs to silence. The stars remain above you, blinking slowly, as if reluctant to surrender to morning. But you've already risen. Because in your world, the sun is not what wakes you. Fire is. You shuffle barefoot across the packed earth. the night still wrapped around your shoulders like a damp shawl. The air is thick with dust and memory. You move without thought, your path to the courtyard kitchen as familiar as the grooves in your palm. There, the hearth lies dormant, cold, sullen, a heap of ashes where yesterday's fire once whispered. You crouch, your knees crack softly. You're still young, but the floor has already claimed your bones. With practiced care, you gather twigs, bits of palm fiber, and the dried refuse of last night's fire. You strike flint to stone, once, twice, then a faint hiss, a glow, the delicate cough of flame. It is not glorious, it is not dramatic, but it is yours. The first light you see each day is orange, and it comes not from the sky, but from the belly of your stove. The fire wakes slowly, just like you. Together, you breathe life into the day. You feed it with patience. Too much rush and the embers die. Too little and the dough won't rise. You've learned this balance, not through lessons, but through burns. Fire has been both teacher and tyrant. As the flames stretch and crackle, you begin the ancient choreography of breakfast. First, grind the grain. The stone mill is older than your father's stories. It's not kind. Your shoulders ache as you push the heavy upper stone in circles. Grit scratches your hands. Each turn releases the scent of raw barley. Earthy, bitter, familiar. You close your eyes. The rhythm is meditative, almost sacred. Next, mix the dough. Just water and flour, nothing more. You knead with your weight, your wrists pressing into the sticky mass. It's thankless work. No one will see this moment. No one will know how long it takes for dough to soften under the warmth of your hands. But you know. You know? Because if it's wrong, if the bread cracks, if the texture is off, they'll taste the mistake, and they'll trace it back to you. Always to you. You shape each loaf carefully. Flat discs, meant to be stacked or tucked beside pickled vegetables. No leavening, no sweetness, just sustenance. You place them near the fire, in clay molds blackened by 100 mornings just like this one. They hiss softly when they touch the heat, a sound you've come to trust. The courtyard begins to wake. A rooster shouts in the distance, demanding attention. Somewhere, a child coughs. A pot clinks. The first breath of dawn pushes its way across the rooftops. But you're already sweating. Not from fear, not from urgency, from devotion. Because breakfast is not just food, it's structure. And you are its architect. By the time the rest of the house stirs, you've already fed them without a word. The air smells of grain and ash, a perfume of effort. A servant collects the bread, nods once, does not thank you. She won't taste it. Not today. Not unless someone drops theirs or refuses a meal. That's when leftovers appear. Torn, slightly burned, cool from neglect. That's your breakfast. Still, you take it. You chew it slowly, savoring the texture. It tastes like work. Like the sound of your own breath in the pre-dawn dark. Like staying ahead of hunger. You eat standing, always. There's no time to sit. Not now. The stew pot needs cleaning. The lentils must be soaked, and you know how quickly the sun rises once it decides to. Your kitchen has no walls. It breathes with the day, open to wind, to sand, to the sharp cries of market sellers in the distance. But the hearth is yours. You built it with your mother, mounded clay, shaped by hand, hardened by smoke. It crouches low, like an animal waiting to be fed. Around it are your tools, long-handled wooden spoons worn soft with time. A chipped amphora that leaks unless propped just right. Baskets that once held onions, now empty. They'll be filled again soon, but not by you. That job belongs to the girl who runs errands. If she forgets the garlic again, it will be your fault, because that's how it works here. You pause for a moment, just long enough to stretch your arms, roll your shoulders. The morning sun slips over the roofline, spills into the courtyard. Golden but unforgiving. You squint. Your skin has grown darker over the years, kissed and scolded by the sun in equal measure. You are not shielded by veils or shade. You are the kind of woman who cooks in the heat, bathes in cold water, and wears scars like seasons. The bread is done. You lift it from the clay, fingers quick and firm. It's hot. The steam curls upward, fragrant with barley and char. You let it rise past your face and disappear into the air, as if offering it to gods who've long stopped answering. But you keep offering. That's the rhythm. Fire, bread, ash, repeat. Some mornings you remember. Not memories exactly, but sensations. The first time your mother let you stir the stew, the way she smiled without looking. The moment she passed you the paddle, not as a child, but as an equal. It wasn't ceremony. There were no words. Just a glance, a nod. And then she stepped back, and you stepped in. You've thought about that moment often. Especially now, when the fire stings your eyes and your joints groan like old doors. You think about how young she was, how tired, and how quietly you became her. Now, the house is fully awake. Voices rise, commands echo, a door slams, footsteps scatter, and you stay low, stay quiet. You know your place. It's not submission. It's survival. Because in your silence there is focus. And in that focus, a kind of power. You're not distracted by gossip. You don't envy the woman who gets to wash linens or tend goats. You know what you're good at. You know that without you, the stomachs of this house would complain loudly and dangerously. That doesn't make you proud, but it makes you needed. And that's enough. For now, there is something almost holy in these mornings, despite their repetition. The world outside may be ruled by scribes and soldiers, by gods painted on temple walls. But here, in this courtyard, with your sleeves rolled and your fire breathing steadily, you are the one who makes life continue. You feed those who serve and those who command. And no one thanks you. But your bread rises anyway. Your stew simmers. The lentils soften just right. And somewhere deep in your chest, behind the soot and the ache, there's a quiet knowledge. You are invisible, but essential. And as the morning fades into noonlight, and the heat sharpens like a blade, you wipe your brow with the edge of your tunic. You press your palm to the warm surface of the stove, feeling its pulse slow. It will burn again soon. It always does. But for now, you breathe and let the fire rest. Just for a moment. They don't see your hands. Not truly. They see what they want to eat, when they want to eat it, and how angry they'll be if it's wrong. But your hands, the ones that scale fish before the sun rises, the ones that wash rice for an hour until the water runs clear, those hands are forgotten the moment the plate is emptied. But you know them. You know every cut and blister, every ridge where the skin hardened like old leather. You know how they tremble only after the work is done. And you know how they've learned to move quickly, silently, without complaint. Because these are not just hands that cook. These are hands that obey. Obedience for you began with food. It started as imitation, watching your mother bow her head slightly when the master entered, watching her offer the first plate without making eye contact. You copied her before you understood why. Later, you learned. A delay in service was disrespect. A dish too cold could be interpreted as insult. A stain on the tunic, a sign of sloppiness, or worse, defiance. And in this house, respect wasn't a gift. It was a performance. Every plate you carried was a symbol of your place. Not too fast. Rushing is rude, not too slow. That suggests laziness. Your fingers had to be steady, your eyes lowered. The food had to be just hot enough to steam, just seasoned enough to please. You became an artist of restraint. Sometimes, during the midday rush, you would see your reflection in a bowl of water and not recognize yourself. Your mouth held tight. Your brow creased from years of concentration. The woman in the reflection did not smile. Why would she? Smiles are for others, for those who are served, not for those who serve. Still, you'd glance once more, not in vanity, in curiosity. Who is she? This woman who measures out cumin as if her life depends on it. Who reads the mood of the household like others read the sky? You are not the cook. You are the temperature gauge, the tension sponge, the invisible tide that rises and falls with the moods of others. And there are many moods. The overseer who likes his stew without garlic, his son who demands extra salt, the daughter who will not eat bread that is even slightly burned, the priest who must be served with the right hand, never the left. Each person is a recipe, and each recipe comes with its risks. You've never burned a meal, but you've seen others do it. They weren't punished loudly, just quietly removed. No one spoke their names again. One day, you turned around and the girl who stirred the pot beside you for 2 years was gone. Her apron still hung behind the door. You didn't ask. You just stirred her pot too. Obedience seeps into you. It settles like flour in the folds of your dress. It becomes habit. A dropped spoon becomes an apology whispered into your sleeve. A misplaced spice becomes an hour of silence, self-imposed. You learn to listen not just to voices, but to footsteps. The way someone walks tells you what kind of day it will be. You hear a heavy heel? Prepare the richer dish. Light steps? They're in a mood. Tread carefully. Even the dog's bark tells you something. Is he barking at the guest or just hungry? Your work begins before words. Because in this kitchen, intuition is survival. There was a day, years ago, when you forgot. You were tired. The fire had been stubborn. The flour, damp from the storm. And in your haste, you served the stew in the wrong bowl. The one reserved for the lady of the house. She didn't shout. She didn't hit. She just looked at you, slowly from head to toe, and said, "Even dogs know their place." You nodded. You didn't cry. Not there. You saved your tears for the washing basin, where the oil stuck to the sides and the heat turned your skin red. And the next day, you remembered. But obedience is not always fear. Sometimes it's elegance. A kind of dance you perform each day, a rhythm you've learned without music. You anticipate needs before they're spoken. You keep the lentils boiling just long enough, but never too long. You remember that the bread must be brought last when guests are from the north. They expect it fresh. You adjust the seasoning slightly when the lady is fasting. You offer mint water before she asks. These are not rules written on papyrus. These are instincts born from repetition, from mistakes you never made again, from the silence of your station, from knowing that to be a cook in this house means being both servant and sentinel. There's beauty in that in its own way. Not glory, not pride, but a quiet elegance in mastery, a comfort in knowing that the kitchen listens to you, that the fire bends for you, that the knives obey your rhythm, not the other way around. Even as you obey others, you command the space around you. You decide when the lentils are ready. You know when the fig is ripe, and you choose how to turn bitterness sweet. No one calls you by name when they praise the meal, but you hear it anyway, in the silence that follows a good bite, in the sigh of a full stomach, in the moment when no one complains. That silence, it's yours. And yet, there are moments when obedience chafes, when your arms ache and your stomach is hollow and someone still asks for more, when they complain of the heat while you've been sweating since sunrise, when they leave half their plate untouched and you wonder what hunger would teach them. But you don't say it. You never say it. Instead, you scrape their plates clean and reuse what you can. You whisper to the stew pot as if it were a friend. You let the anger melt with the fat. You stir and stir and stir again until there's nothing left but the taste of time and memory. At night, when the kitchen sleeps, your obedience softens. You light a small fire, not for work, but for warmth. You soak your feet in cold water. You run your hands over the burn marks, the calluses, the places where your skin no longer feels. And you allow yourself just briefly to imagine. What if your hands didn't have to serve? What would they create? Would they make bread in a shape never seen? Would they stir honey into milk just for sweetness? Would they dance over a table set only for you? You close your eyes. The dream is small, but it's yours. And then the fire dims, and you, ever obedient, extinguish it before sleep. Because morning always returns, and with it, the rhythm, the silence, the fire, the bread, and the hands that obey. You leave the house before the heat begins to hiss through the streets. It's still early, but already the world is moving. You feel it in the dust rising from the earth with each footstep. You smell it in the mix of sweat, fermenting dates, and fresh dung that hangs in the air like a second skin. You hear it in the chorus of voices that echo off mud brick walls, sharp, rhythmic, full of intent. This is the market. Not the market of stories, not the painted versions carved in temple walls. There are no neat rows, no serene merchants smiling in harmony. This place, this narrow corridor of shouting and shoving, of jostling elbows and hands slick with fish scales, is something far more sacred and profane. Because here, life barters with survival, and you are its quiet priestess. The market doesn't love you. You're just another woman in a linen shift, carrying a worn basket and a memorized list. You step around puddles that are not water. You duck past shouting men who don't bother to look down. You make yourself small, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Small bodies slip between carts. Small women avoid notice, but your eyes take in everything. The fish today are duller than usual, scales loose, eyes milky. Too long in the sun. You pass them by. The onion seller tries to charge you double, pretending not to know your face. You remind him, softly, with no smile. He nods, adjusts the price. Respect here is earned, not by volume, but by constancy. You've come every week for years. You don't haggle loud, you don't threaten. But you remember, and they know it. You approach the herb woman next. Her stall is low to the ground, just piles of crushed green and pale brown, layered over cloths that haven't been washed in weeks. She offers you dried dill, but you shake your head. You're looking for coriander. Fresh, not powdered. Whole seeds, if possible. She looks at you carefully, then reaches beneath her tunic and produces a tiny bundle wrapped in palm fiber. You take it gently. Sniff it once. Yes, it's right. You trade for it. A bit of barley flour more than you'd like, but it's worth it. Coriander hides bitterness. And today, bitterness must be masked. Everything here is negotiation. Not just of prices, but of glances, gestures, favors owed and returned. You recognize a young boy from the baker's house. He offers you bread from his basket, slightly overbaked, likely unwanted. You nod and trade him a handful of dates. Neither of you speaks. That's the nature of things. Speech is for transactions. Silence is for survival. Some days the market feels like a river in flood. Too many people. Too many smells. The press of bodies and shouting, always shouting, clogs your thoughts like smoke in your throat. But today is quiet. The gods must be tired or listening. You find what you need. Lentils that are dry but not dusty. Garlic that still has bite. A single pomegranate, bruised but whole. You hold it in your palm, feel its weight. The outer skin is cracked, just slightly, not enough to ruin it. You take it. It'll be for you. Not today, not tomorrow, but one night soon when the others sleep. You'll break it open in the dark. Let the seeds fall into your palm like blood-red stars. A taste of something sweet. Just for you. On your way back, you pass the spice man. His table is covered in tiny bowls. Turmeric, fenugreek, crushed mint, saffron for those who can afford it. You can't. Not really. But he lets you smell it anyway. The kindness, offered without words. You close your eyes. The scent lifts you out of your body. For just a breath, you're not a cook or a servant or a body in a crowd. You are wind. You are memory. Then he nods, and you go. Carrying the basket back is always harder. Not because of weight, though it is heavy. Because of thought. This is the moment when your mind begins to tally what you have, what you don't, what you can stretch, what must be hidden. You play recipes like songs in your head. What can you mash with onion to soften it? What dish can you disguise with broth? Which item will be missed least if it's served later or not at all? It's a kind of math they never taught you, the arithmetic of scarcity, but you're fluent. The house comes into view. Its walls are tall, meant to protect from both thieves and sun. The doors are always closed when you return. You must knock. Twice, then once, like always. A girl opens. She's younger than you were when you first carried the basket. She does not meet your eyes. You nod to her anyway, because you remember. Inside, the air changes. Cooler, darker, thicker with rules. You carry the basket to the kitchen and begin unpacking. Each item placed carefully, like ritual objects on a sacred altar. You touch the coriander last. You don't unwrap it. Not yet. First, the fire must be fed, the pot must be cleaned, the knives sharpened, and only then, only when the work has begun, will you open it. Let it breathe. Let it tell you how the day will taste. They will not ask where you went. They will not thank you. They will eat what you make and leave the rest. But when they close their eyes tonight and sleep with full bellies, you'll know. You are the priestess of the market, and your offering was accepted. The fish is still alive. It lies on the stone table, gills pulsing faintly, mouth opening and closing in a slow, steady rhythm, as if trying to breathe the air, to make sense of the world it now belongs to. Its silver scales shimmer with the last remnants of river water. You watch it, not out of cruelty, out of respect, because you know what it takes to end a life, even a small one, especially when it feeds others. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last. You've done this for years now, taking creatures from basket to blade, from twitching to stillness. It doesn't make you hard, it makes you precise. The others think the hardest part of cooking is fire, or hunger, or time. But no, it's this. The moment where something alive becomes something edible, and you are the hand that makes it so. The blade isn't sharp, it never is. You've asked for a better one more times than you can count. But better blades go to better people. To the butchers, to the priests, to the men who cut meat with ceremony. You use the same dull knife for everything. Still, you make it work. You hold the fish with one hand, steadying its slippery body. With the other, you begin, head first, just behind the gills. The blade bites, hesitates, then slides. Not clean, not easy, but done. The twitching stops, and the silence that follows is heavier than the act itself. There's a rhythm to gutting fish. You know it by heart. Slice the belly. Pull out the entrails, they're still warm. You work quickly before the smell turns. You discard nothing. The bones, the head, the innards, they all have purpose. Soup, stock, even bait. Waste is for the rich. You are not rich. You are efficient and quiet. Once cleaned, the fish goes into the clay bowl. Salt, rubbed into the flesh. A mix of cumin and crushed garlic, pressed in with your thumb. You add crushed coriander, just a pinch. Then a splash of sour beer to cut the scent. It sits for a while, absorbing what it can. Like you, cooking fish is always a risk. Too long and it crumbles. Too little and the flesh clings, resistant to the bone. You place it over the coals, not directly on flame. The clay pan sings softly as it heats. You watch it carefully. No distractions. The skin darkens, curls at the edge. A single bubble of fat rises to the surface and bursts. That's the sign. You flip it. Gently. The skin cracks, but holds. You breathe. It will be good. Others move in and out of the kitchen, their footsteps careless. One girl glances at your pan, opens her mouth to ask, but you shake your head. Not yet. You want the fish to rest. Just a moment longer. Let it finish in its own time. You think about the river sometimes. Not just because it gives you fish, because it gave you stories. As a girl, you sat on its edge, listening to your uncle speak of gods who turned into crocodiles, of women who washed their sins with lotus flowers, of cities swallowed by floods. Back then, the Nile was mystery. Now it's routine. But when you cook fish, when the scales still shine under your fingers, you remember that the river feeds, that it takes, that its gifts are never given lightly, and you treat them accordingly. The fish is done. You lift it from the pan. Let the oil drip. Its smell fills the courtyard, rich, sharp, slightly sour. It draws attention. Voices call. You say nothing. You place the fish on a platter of woven reeds. Lay a strip of pickled onion across the top. Add 3 olives, 1 for each son of the overseer. They will eat it with their fingers, loud and ungrateful. They will not notice the crisp skin. They will not taste the coriander. But you will, because you made it, because your hands brought it from life to offering. And somewhere in that process, quiet, bloody, beautiful, you left a part of yourself. Later, when the platter returns, picked clean, you take the head, not for waste, for meaning. You place it in the fire, watch the bones crack, smell the memory leaving smoke, and you let it go. Some things in your kitchen don't belong to the world of the living. They belong to whispers, to memories, to things passed hand to hand without words. The jars on your shelf are not just ingredients. They are relics of experience. Some carry flavor, others carry warning. All carry weight. And not everything you cook is meant to be eaten with the mouth. Some things are swallowed by the soul. You learned early that herbs can do more than flavor. They can soothe. They can deceive. They can wake a dying man or hush a restless one. And that knowledge isn't taught. It's absorbed from overheard conversations, from the way your mother reached for fennel when someone couldn't sleep, from the time the old neighbor whispered to you to rub marjoram into your temples when the world got too loud. There is power in those green things, power that doesn't answer to the gods or to men. Your shelves are modest. They wouldn't impress a healer or a priest, but you know them like your own fingers. There's mint for breath, basil for clarity, rue, sharp and bitter, used only when necessary, anise seeds, small and light, that hum like secrets when crushed. But your favorite, fenugreek, not for taste, for memory. It smells like your mother's neck after a long day, like sweat and safety, like the corner of the kitchen where she kept the baby when you were little. You crush a few seeds in your palm sometimes just to feel near her again. She's gone now, but the smell remains. There was a time, a bad flood year, when food was short, tempers sharp. A woman in the house began to refuse meals, said she was being poisoned, said she saw shapes in the steam of the stew. They brought in a priest. He burned papyrus, waved incense, muttered prayers. Nothing changed. Until one night, you made her a tea. Just hot water, rose petals, and 2 leaves of blue lotus. She drank it, slept for 12 hours. The next morning, she thanked the gods. But you knew. It wasn't the gods. It was your garden. You don't grow herbs in the yard. Too much sun. Too many eyes. You grow them in clay pots near the back wall where shadows gather and flies don't reach. You water them quietly. Speak to them sometimes. Not with words, with hands. You pinch mint at the root when someone nearby is having nightmares. You dry thyme slowly over days when the house is filled with visitors and tensions run high. You don't call yourself a healer, but you listen to the body of the house, and sometimes you answer it. The men in the house don't care what you use. As long as their meals taste good, they leave you be. But the women, they watch. One in particular, the overseer's cousin. She comes to the kitchen sometimes, not to help, but to hover. Her hands are soft, her eyes sharp. She asks what you're grinding. You say, spice. She asks what for. You say for flavor. She doesn't believe you. She's right not to. Because sometimes your hands are not cooking. They're protecting. And sometimes protection is bitter. There are recipes you don't write down, like the paste you make from garlic and oil when someone's throat won't stop closing, like the vinegar infusion that calms fever when the river's spirits stir the air, like the broth you brew from chicken bones and crushed cumin, not for food, but for grief. You made it the day the youngest daughter died, just 7. Fever took her in 2 days. You weren't allowed in the room, but you left the bowl outside the door. The mother never said thank you, but the bowl was empty by morning. Not everything you make is safe. There was a jar once, tucked in the back corner of the shelf, wrapped in cloth, sealed with wax. It belonged to your grandmother. No one touches it. You don't even open it, but you know what's inside. Poppy resin. She never used it to cook, only to end pain or start silence. It's your last resort. Your unspoken answer to questions too big for breath. You hope never to use it, but you know you will. One day. Even fire can be medicinal if you listen to it. You burn rosemary when there's too much arguing. You scatter bay leaves in the coals when someone returns from a long journey. You throw fennel stems into the fire on cold mornings, not for warmth, but to clean the air. The kitchen smells change with the house's mood, and you are the one who decides. One night, long ago, you added crushed sage to a stew by mistake. Too much. The flavor turned bitter. You expected scolding. Instead, the master of the house said it reminded him of his mother. He finished the bowl, and the next morning, he asked for the same dish. You've made it every week since. You still don't like the taste, but you understand its meaning. Sage for remembrance. Some herbs dry quickly. Others resist. Some flowers bloom at night and must be plucked in silence. Some leaves only release their scent when bruised. You've learned to read them all, not just by smell, but by emotion. If the thyme smells wrong, someone is hiding something. If the dill wilts overnight, someone nearby is afraid. You don't tell anyone this. They wouldn't understand. But you do, because your hands carry not just food. They carry the memory of every herb, every root, every bitterness that became balm. You grind your herbs on a stone made smooth by generations. You store them in jars your mother used. You crush, boil, steep, and stir, not only to cook, but to heal, to hide, to hope. And somewhere, between the ashes of the fire and the silence of your breath, there's magic, but not the kind that turns frogs to gold, the kind that keeps hearts beating and bellies calm and minds still, the kind of magic that smells like rosemary at dusk and tastes like safety. There's a moment every morning just before you light the fire when your hands pause, not from tiredness, from caution. Because cooking in this house is not simply about feeding, it is about avoiding punishment. You've seen what happens when expectations are not met. A missing ingredient, bread too firm, a soup too hot or too cold. The reasons don't matter. Only the result, blame, and you, being the cook, are always the nearest target. Even when the mistake isn't yours, there's a particular silence in the room before someone is punished. It settles over the walls like a fog. You've learned to recognize it. The way people stop walking, how eyes avoid one another, how even the flames seem to dim. It's a silence full of held breath. You once dropped a pot of lentils. Not all of it, just enough to cause a delay. No one yelled. They didn't have to. The delay meant a guest had to wait. The guest complained. And the overseer's wife, without a word, made you kneel on hot stones for an hour. Your knees blistered. She didn't look at you while it happened. You never dropped anything again. Some punishments are louder. A slap with a wooden spoon. A handful of salt thrown in your eyes. Once, a girl was beaten with a cooking paddle for adding cumin to a dish that was meant to be plain. She left the next day. No one spoke of her again. But the paddle stayed in the kitchen, hanging above the hearth, like a reminder. You don't speak much anymore. Not unless spoken to. Not unless you're sure the answer is correct. Words, like seasonings, can turn sour too quickly. So you focus on action, on cutting the vegetables exactly the same size, on arranging the bread in perfect rows, on keeping your head down, even when your neck burns. Perfection is protection, not pride. Sometimes someone else is punished, and you feel relief. Not because you wanted it, but because, for once, it wasn't you. It's a terrible feeling, but honest. In this kitchen, there's no room for softness, only efficiency, only silence, only survival. The worst punishments aren't physical. They're the ones where they take something from you. A day off you were promised. A cup of leftover stew you were saving. A single fig snatched from your hand. No explanation, just gone. Like a message. You are allowed nothing of your own. Even joy is rationed. Even hunger must wait. You've learned to read their faces. The overseer's wife purses her lips when she's displeased. The boy drums his fingers on the table when he's bored with the food. The eldest daughter sighs. Once, sharply, when something's wrong. You know what those signs mean. You fix the mistake before they speak, because if they speak, it's too late. And if they call your name, it's already over. Some days you try to be invisible. You keep your movements quiet, your steps light. You time your tasks so that no one notices. You become like steam there, but untouchable. It's exhausting, but it's safer. Other days you're noticed no matter what. For a chipped bowl, for an uneven cut, for nothing at all. Because sometimes they just need someone to blame. And you are always nearby. Still, you don't hate them. Not fully. Hate requires energy you no longer have. Instead, you build walls inside yourself. Rooms where their voices can't enter. You store moments there, safe ones. The smell of baking bread, the hiss of a simmering pot, the rhythm of your own breathing. Those become your sanctuary. Not love, not freedom, just quiet. Once you spoke back. You were younger then, still soft in the eyes. The overseer accused you of overcooking the lentils when you knew it was his son who left them on the fire too long. You said, "It wasn't me." That's all. 4 words. He stared at you, then told you to wash the latrines for a week. You never said it again. Now, when they accuse, you nod. When they scold, you bow your head. It's not surrender, it's calculation. Your real voice lives elsewhere. In how you salt the stew, in the tenderness of your bread, in the balance of your spices. You speak through food, because it's the only language they can't punish. There's a boy in the house now, young, no more than 10. He watches you cook. He says nothing, but his eyes are kind. You once handed him a scrap of honey bread. He smiled, said, "You're good." You didn't reply, but later that night you cried into the dishwater because no one had said that in years. You don't cook with fear because you want to. You cook with fear because it's the only thing that guarantees your place. There are others waiting. You've seen them. Girls with quicker hands, prettier faces, brighter voices. They would take your place in a blink. You're not irreplaceable. You're just experienced, just useful, just good enough not to be removed for now. And so, every morning when your hands hover above the fire, you remember the blisters, the stones, the silence, and you begin again. Not with hope, with precision. Because here, in this house, food is not love. Food is expectation. And you are the one who must never disappoint. You are not the voice of the house. You are not the one whose name echoes through the halls. You are not summoned to give advice or to share stories or to offer laughter at the end of a meal. You are the one behind the door, behind the curtain, behind the scent. Your words don't travel past the kitchen walls, but your pots do. And in this world, the pots speak louder than you ever could. Every dish you prepare is a message. Not one they'd recognize as such, but it speaks nonetheless. It says, "I see what you like. I know what comforts you. I remember what you left uneaten 3 weeks ago and never mentioned again." The pot says, "She made it exactly the way you like, even though no one told her." The ladle says, "She knows what you need before you ask." The tray says, "She's still here. You don't have a voice in their world, but your food does. You've heard them talk as they eat. Not about you, but around you. And in those casual comments, their satisfaction, their indifference, their surprise, you find feedback. Not compliments, signs, a shorter chewing time. Bread too dense, a frown. Sauce too sharp. A cleared plate with silence, perfect. You adjust. Not because they asked, because you listened. The irony is that your pots and pans are ancient. Chipped, mismatched, worn by decades of fire and soap and misuse. But they still serve, like you. They don't shine, but they carry memory. And memory, in this kitchen, is more valuable than gold. One pot in particular, heavy, blackened, with a crack running down its side, has never let you down. You call it hers. It belonged to the woman who taught you how to stir lentils without breaking them. She's gone now, but the pot remains. And when you cook in it, the flavor changes, not magically, just better, deeper, as if her hands still echo through its clay. The pans do more than cook. They hold your emotions. You stir anger into soup, letting the bubbles carry it away. You press hope into dough, watching it rise like breath. You coat bitterness in oil, soften it with flame. You transform your silence into taste. And that, too, is a kind of speech. There's a bowl with a chip, shaped like a crescent moon. You use it when someone in the house is sick. Not because it heals, but because it comforts. There's a ladle with a crooked handle. You use it for porridge. There's a spoon worn almost flat. You save it for sauces. Each tool has a rhythm, a voice, just like you. Sometimes when you work alone at night, you speak to them, not loudly, just a whisper, barely breath. You ask the pot to be kind to the rice. You tell the spoon not to splatter. You joke with the fire, beg it to behave. No one hears, but it helps because your thoughts are heavy. And these old things, these humble, blackened, beaten things, are your closest companions. They don't interrupt. They don't scold. They just carry what you give them and give it back. Hotter, tastier, real. Once, a guest asked who cooked the stew. The overseer shrugged. The cook. No name, no praise, just a fact. But you heard it. And later that night, when you cleaned that pot, you ran your fingers along its rim and said, "We did it." Because you did. You and the pot, the heat, the hands, the silence, together. They don't ask what your favorite dish is. They wouldn't care. But if they did, you'd say, the lentils. Not because they're special, because they were the first thing you ever cooked alone. The first thing that didn't burn. The first thing someone finished quietly and left the bowl empty. That silence stayed with you. It was your first real conversation. Now, years later, you still listen for that silence. It's your applause, your thank you, your name spoken without sound. You know that one day, someone else will take your place. Another girl, so younger, faster, hungrier. She'll inherit your pans, your ladle, your chipped bowl. And maybe, just maybe, she'll hear them too. She'll know that the burn mark on the side of the pot means to stir clockwise. She'll learn that the spoon with the notch near the top measures exactly 1 scoop of millet. She'll discover that, even without a voice, the kitchen remembers. And maybe she'll speak to the fire too, and feel less alone. But for now, you're the keeper of their voices, the steward of the pots, the one whose silence feeds a household. You may not speak, but they eat. And in each bite, your story continues. The food you make is beautiful. You've learned how to plate a dish so that the olives glisten, the bread sits perfectly warm, and the lentils nestle into the clay bowl like they belong there. You've mastered the balance between color and smell, knowing that a bit of pickled onion, a smear of yogurt, a hint of sesame will draw the eyes and the appetite. But it is not for you. It never has been. The banquets are always for others. You serve, they feast. And later, when the plates come back half finished and smeared with finger marks and carelessness, you eat what they didn't want and pretend it was enough. You've grown used to hunger, not starvation, not pain. A kind of ghost hunger, a hollow that walks beside you during the day and lies beside you at night. A constant sense that you are near food, touching food, transforming food, but not consuming it. Not truly. The midday meal is always the loudest. Men speaking over one another, bread being torn apart, laughter like barking dogs. You stay behind the curtain, waiting, watching. Once, a child peeked in and said, "Why doesn't she eat with us?" The mother laughed. "She's the cook. She has her own food." You do. Sort of. A bowl of yesterday's stew, cold and thick. Bread too dry for the table. The onions heal. Fish bones. You chew slowly. Not out of reverence, but caution. You don't want to get sick. There's no one to cover your duties if you fall ill. No one ever asks if you're well. Only if the food is. You used to resent them. Especially when the good food came back untouched. When a dish you labored over for hours, mincing garlic so fine your fingers blistered, was sent away after 2 bites. You once took a half-eaten date tart from a guest's plate and held it in your hand. Still warm, still soft. You didn't eat it. You just looked at it, at what you were never meant to have. Then you gave it to the cat, because dignity, too, must eat. You've grown clever. When no one is watching, you scrape a bit of the stew from the bottom of the pot before it's served. Just enough to fill a small bowl, You tuck it behind the basket of millet where the flies can't reach. You hide a single boiled egg beneath a pile of onion skins. You chew dried dates late at night when everyone else sleeps. It's not stealing. It's balance. You give everything. You take almost nothing, but almost is still something. There are days, though, when nothing is left. When guests eat everything, lick their fingers, ask for more. And you are left with empty bowls and a stomach that has learned patience. On those nights, you drink hot water. You chew a sprig of mint. You go to sleep and dream of bread and wake up to make it. You remember once, long ago, being offered a place at the table. A guest from another region, unfamiliar with your household's rules, insisted you join. The others laughed, but allowed it. You sat on the edge, barely breathing. The plate in front of you held lamb, spiced rice, and sweet carrots. You took one bite, just one, and your hands began to shake. You didn't eat more. You didn't want them to see how much you wanted it. That was the first and last time. Afterward, you were reminded gently, cruelly, that a cook does not belong at the table. Only her food does. And so, you watch. You memorize their preferences, their indulgences, their waste. You smile softly when the boy eats his bread crust first, just like his father. You nod when the woman adds salt before tasting. You watch them eat and feel not envy, something else. Distance, like you live beside their lives, but never within them. Like you are steam, present, warm, essential, but gone the moment they're full. The good news is, your body learned to adapt. You don't need much anymore. A small bowl, a piece of fruit, a few sips of broth. Your stomach expects little. Your mouth knows silence better than sweetness. Your hunger has grown elegant, like you. Not a monster, but a shadow. It walks quietly behind you, asking nothing. Once, during a festival, the household prepared a great feast. Ducks, pomegranates, honey cakes. The scent filled the entire street. You worked all day, up to your elbows in flour and grease and fire. At night, when it was over, the overseer's son brought you a single piece of honey cake, not whole, not perfect, just a corner, still warm. He didn't speak. He left it on your work table and walked away. You stared at it for a long time. Then you ate it, slowly, alone, and cried after. Not because it was delicious, because someone remembered. You don't expect that now. Kindness, it's too expensive. But on the rare days when the bread rises just right, or when the stew smells like something your mother used to make, you allow yourself a taste. You sit on the floor. You eat with your fingers. And for a few minutes, the food is not for them. It's for you. And that is enough. You don't leave the kitchen much. You tell yourself it's because there's always something to do. Bread to knead, pots to scrub, herbs to hang. And it's true. There is always something. But if you're honest, it's also because the kitchen is the only place where you know exactly who you are. Outside the kitchen, the house is a labyrinth. Rooms you must walk through without leaving footprints. Hallways where voices echo with decisions you're not part of. Courtyards where laughter sounds like something foreign. You move through those spaces like smoke, present but unwelcome. Inside the kitchen, you are the center of the heat, of the smell, of the rhythm. You're not mistress of the house, but in this space, with soot on your skin and knives in your hands, you're not invisible. You're necessary, and that matters. But even here, even in this small domain, freedom is an illusion. You don't decide what to cook. You don't choose when. You don't eat first. You don't rest when tired. The fire is your clock. The orders are your gospel. The silence is your chains. You cannot leave without permission. And when you're gone too long, they notice. Not out of concern, but inconvenience. You're not a person in this room. You are a function, a body that chops, a hand that stirs, a shadow that knows how to keep its head down. Still, the kitchen holds something sacred, a kind of familiarity that nothing else in the house offers. The same pots, the same smells, the same creak of the wooden shelf, the same rhythm of the pestle against the mortar. When the world outside feels too sharp, too loud, too confusing, you retreat to the one place where your presence isn't questioned. You light the fire, you grind the grain, you find your way back to yourself, one motion at a time. You once asked yourself what it would be like to work somewhere else, to not be tethered to fire and flour and hunger, to walk outside the compound gates, feel the wind on your arms, speak without fear of saying too much. The thought made your chest tighten, not because you didn't want it, but because you wouldn't know who to be out there. Here, you're the cook. Every scar, every ache, every callus, earned. Out there, you would be, what? Just another woman? Just another stranger? In the kitchen, even pain has a name. Out there, you're not sure you'd have one. There's a corner of the kitchen near the back where the light falls just right. In the late afternoon, when the fire's low and the others are eating, you sometimes sit there for a moment. Just a moment. Your body still, your eyes closed, your thoughts soft. It's not a break. Breaks aren't allowed. It's a pause, a pocket of stillness, your own kind of prayer. You've carved a routine out of repetition, not for joy, for structure. The fire first, then the bread, then the stew, then the washing, then the preparation for tomorrow. Every day the same. But in sameness, you find something like peace. The fire doesn't ask who you are. It only asks, are you here? And you are. You always are. There was a day, a terrible day, when a guest insulted your stew in front of the entire house. The overseer didn't defend you. He nodded, said he'd handle it. You expected punishment. Instead, you were left alone. No one spoke to you for 2 days. The silence was worse than any slap, but the kitchen remained. And that night, as you stirred the pot, the lentils thickened perfectly, as if the food, at least, still knew who you were, as if the fire forgave what people didn't. Some nights, when everyone sleeps, you sweep the floor slowly, not because it's dirty, because you need the sound, the bristles on clay, the echo of effort. It reminds you that you exist, that you are more than a task, more than a name never spoken aloud. You are hands that hold. You are eyes that see. You are the memory of every meal that ever mattered. The kitchen is not freedom, but it is familiar. And in a world that shifts constantly, where power walks on soft sandals and mercy is measured in silence, that is no small thing. Familiarity is safety, and safety is rare. You once hid in the kitchen to cry, not because of hunger, not because of pain, because someone said your name wrong, not out of malice, out of forgetting. They called you by the name of a girl who left years ago. You didn't correct them, but when you got back to the kitchen, You whispered your name to the bread, over and over, letting the dough remember, even if no one else did. Now, when you knead, the rhythm is your heartbeat. When you slice, the pattern is your voice. When you stir, the motion is your signature. You exist here, not on scrolls, not in memory, but in texture, in flavor, in heat. The kitchen holds you, and though it is a prison, it is also the only place that knows your story by heart. Water is life. They say it often in Egypt, and they're right. But for you, water isn't some distant symbol or sacred truth carved into stone. It's not the majestic Nilo, the god river that priests praise and scribes document. For you, water is a burden, a task, a fight, something to carry, something to ration, something to steal from the sun before it steals it back. You wake before the others not just to bake, but to draw water. Because by the time the heat rises, every jug left in the open will be too warm to drink, and the riverbank too crowded to reach. You don't live on the Nile, you live near it. But near is never enough, not when you're the one holding the jug. The clay amphora is heavy even when empty, its mouth chipped, its side stained with rings of old water and newer ash. You balance it on your hip like a child you never asked for, and walk. The sun not yet risen, but already the dust begins to lift. You pass others like you, girls, women, old men bent like trees in wind, each holding some vessel, some container, some reason to keep moving forward toward the shimmer of the river ahead. The river is not yours. You've always known that. Not really. It belongs to the landowners, the priests, the gods. You take from it as a courtesy, as if borrowing from something that might notice your absence, but never your effort. Still, you kneel. Dip the amphora. Let the cold bite your skin. And wait. Water takes its time, especially when it's being stolen. On good days, the amphora fills evenly. No leaks, no spills. You wrap it with cloth, tie it with rope, and hoist it back onto your hip. The way back is harder. The sun creeps higher. The jug feels heavier. No longer potential, but weight. You sweat. Not out of panic, but precision. You must not spill. You must not stumble. Each drop that hits the ground is one less mouth cooled, one less bowl rinsed, one less chance to avoid scolding later. By the time you reach the house, your arm aches, your back throbs, but you don't rest. You lift the jug to the shelf above the stove using your shoulder, your elbow, your patience. You open the lid carefully, listen for the sound. That low, round hum of clean water. You've made it. For now. Water rules your kitchen more than fire. Fire demands attention, but water demands planning. There's only so much. You can't waste it rinsing herbs more than once. You can't use a full bowl to wash a pot. You must think ahead. Who drinks first? Who needs washing? What can be reused? What must be discarded? There are hierarchies even in hydration. And you are always at the bottom. You learn tricks. You let sediment settle before pouring. You cover the pot with cloth to keep it cool. You mix drinking water with a bit of sour beer when it's too stale to be trusted. You use the first rinse of rice to clean the table, the second to soak your feet. You never speak of these things. No one wants to know how close they live to thirst. You've seen girls punished for spilling water, not by beatings, by shame, by looks, by extra chores, by silence stretched too tight. Water is not just precious. It is watched. There was a year when the river ran low. Not a full drought, just enough to remind everyone. Suddenly you were told to use less, boil in batches, serve thinner porridge, reuse the same pot without washing. The water jugs were locked at night, and for the first time, you understood just how fragile everything was. Bread you could bake from flour and fire, but water. No one can summon water. Not even the gods. That was also the year the overseer fell ill. Sweat like vinegar, tongue swollen, eyes wild. They blamed bad food, but you knew. He drank from a cup left uncovered. The flies had danced over it all day. You said nothing. You just boiled everything twice for weeks. Even if it meant standing longer over the fire. Even if it meant saving less for yourself. You still do it now. Out of habit, out of fear, out of memory. There are nights you dream of cool rivers. Not the Nile. Some other stream. Slow and shallow. With smooth stones at the bottom and no one else in sight. You sit in the water, arms submerged, hair drifting behind you. There are no jugs, no shouting, no fire waiting at home. Just quiet, just water, just you. You wake up thirsty? Always. You sip from the cup you hide near your bed. 3 mouthfuls, no more. Then you close your eyes again and imagine that river. That version of the world where water isn't a debt. Where it isn't measured, counted, rationed. Where it is simply enough. But until that dream comes true, you wake before the sun. You lift the jug, you walk, and you borrow the Nile once more. Not with permission, with persistence, because thirst doesn't ask nicely. And neither do you. Not anymore. Fire doesn't love you. It never has. It lets you coax it, feed it, mold it, but never trust it. Because fire in a kitchen like yours is never just warmth or light. It is danger wrapped in necessity, a risk you court daily, because the alternative is worse. You wake before dawn to make it live. You spend the rest of the day making sure it doesn't kill you. The hearth is made of clay, cracked and darkened from years of use. It sits low to the ground, close to your knees, so that you bend over it like someone praying. But this is not prayer. This is management. The ash must be cleared before each lighting. Not all of it, just enough to make room for new fuel while preserving the embers. You blow gently at first, coaxing the hidden red to surface. If you do it right, the fire comes to life in soft sighs. If not, you get smoke. Too much smoke, and coughing, and blame. You've been burned. Of course you have. No cook escapes that. There's a scar on your left wrist from the first time the oil splashed back, another on your forearm from when the pot slipped, a faint line across your thumb where you brushed the iron handle in haste. You don't cry anymore when it happens. You flinch. You press it against a cold bowl. You keep going. Because pain in the kitchen is not interruption. It's punctuation. There are rules, even if no one says them. Never leave cloth near flame. Keep oil sealed. Don't add water too quickly to hot pots. Don't ever, ever fall asleep with the fire still breathing. But rules only help if everyone follows them. And not everyone does. Especially the young ones. Especially the boys. You've slapped more than one hand away from the stove. Not in anger, in warning. Because fire does not forgive curiosity. Or carelessness. You've seen it happen. The spark that jumps too far. The pot that tips. The wall that catches. Panic is its own kind of flame. You remember the day a girl lost her hair to it. Her braid caught the heat. She screamed, and it was already over. The smell was worse than the sound. She left the house the next day. Her mother came for her, face tight with shame. No one spoke of her again, but the smell lingered for days. You've learned to smell things early. Burnt grain, boiling fat, clay too close to cracking. Smoke that doesn't drift. It coils thick and low. That's the dangerous kind. You trust your nose more than your eyes, because fire lies. It looks calm just before it roars. It flickers playfully just before it bites. There was a time you tried to use a metal shield, something to keep the sparks from jumping. They said it got in the way, that it made the food taste different. So you took it down and learned to move faster. Now your sleeves are always short, your hair always tied, your arms always braced for heat. You don't wear jewelry. It heats too fast and leaves marks that don't fade. At night, after everything's been cleaned, you watch the coals die. You don't rush it. You sit, wrapped in a cloth, eyes tracing the red lines as they fade into black. It's the only time the fire feels like company, when it's quiet, tired, like you. You whisper to it sometimes, not with hope, with warning. Tomorrow, not now. It listens, mostly. You dream of stoves with stones around them, of metal grills, of tools that stay cool to the touch. But those are for temples, for rich houses, for places where the cook is never burned, only blamed. Your tools are old. Your stove is older, and your skin, oldest of all. When it rains, the fire fights back. Smoke curls up your nose, stings your eyes, makes your lungs fold. Still, you kneel, you blow, you keep going, because no fire means no food. And no food means punishment, and punishment burns worse than flame. You've seen walls scorched. You've smelled linen singe. You've watched stew blacken and bubble until it's beyond saving. And every time, your body tightens, because one bad fire could end it all, not just the food. You, your role, your place, everything. But you've also seen beauty, bread that browns just so. It's fat that crackles at the right moment. Steam rising in spirals that look almost like music. Fire is not evil. It's just untamed. And you are its keeper, its negotiator, its shadow. When you wake with heat still clinging to your dreams, you stretch your hands first, check your palms, wiggle your fingers, reassure yourself. Yes, they still move. They still cook. They still create. Even after everything. You've stopped fearing fire, not because it stopped hurting, because you learned to speak its language with gestures, with timing, with patience. And fire, like fear, is loudest before it gives way to light. So you keep cooking, even when the burns don't heal, even when the smoke won't leave your clothes, because someone must stand near the flame. And today, as always, that someone is you. Bread is the first thing you learned to make. Not because it was easy, because it was necessary. Bread is not a delicacy here. It is survival. It fills space in the stomach when nothing else is available. It accompanies every stew, every porridge, every boiled thing that dares to call itself a meal. And in the world you inhabit, bread is also a measure of your skill, your worth, your place. But it is also the thing most likely to betray you. Because bad bread can cost more than appetite. It can make people sick. It can make them blame you. And that blame, it spreads faster than mold. The flour arrives in sacks, sometimes from the market, sometimes from the storage room guarded by men who do not cook but act as though they feed the entire household. You open each sack with care. Because flour is never just flour. It can be clean, or full of grit, or crawling with weevils. You've learned how to sift with your fingers, not your eyes. Feel for movement, feel for dampness, feel for the tiny grains of sand that ruin everything. You mix with water, not too much, not too little. If the dough sticks to your hand, you add more flour. If it cracks, more water. The rhythm is constant. Press, turn, fold. The bowl creaks under your hands. Your wrists ache before the dough is even shaped. You don't stop. Bread is patient, but only if you are first. You shape the loaves flat, round, oblong, depending on who will eat. The overseer likes his with a harder edge. The children prefer soft centers. The priests want it hollow. The guests expect variety. You mold each type by instinct now, not measurement. There is no scale, no recipe, only memory, only feel. Baking happens near the fire pit, where a round oven lives, half buried, half rising like a sunken jar from the earth. You use flat stones for heat. Wood is scarce, so dung cakes burn instead. The smell is sharp, but the heat is even. If you time it wrong, the bread scorches. If you're too cautious, it's undercooked. Either way, someone complains. So you balance, always balancing. Even when sweat drips into your eyes. Even when the smoke makes your lungs tighten. Even when your knees give slightly from the heat. You stay, because the bread must rise. Even when you're falling. There's a sound bread makes when it's right. A hollow thump when tapped. A slight crackle as the crust sets. You've learned to listen for it, the way others listen for footsteps or prayers. Bread speaks, quietly, but clearly. You eat the burnt edges, the parts too hard for the table. You chew slowly, carefully, because even bread can betray your body. There's always grit, no matter how careful you are. A few grains of sand hide in the flour, waiting for teeth. You've cracked 2 molars. You stopped complaining after the first. Now, you chew on the other side. You've seen people fall ill from bread left too long in storage, from dough mixed with spoiled water, from loaves baked too quickly. The stomach cramps first, then fever, then the silence that says no one wants to admit the bread was the problem. You clean the bowls extra well on those days, scrub the oven floor, burn the rags, and pray, not to gods, but to the dough itself, that tomorrow it will rise pure. Your mother used to say, "Good bread knows your name." It sounded like poetry then. Now, it sounds like hope. Because sometimes when the loaf lifts just right and the crust sings and the inside is soft as breath, you feel seen. Not thanked, not praised, but acknowledged. And that's enough. There is no meal without bread. If the bread is late, the house grows tense. If the bread is wrong, the meal feels cursed. You've watched people tear a loaf and judge its maker before tasting a single bite of anything else. Bread carries blame before flavor. And you carry the bread. There was a day when you had nothing left. No oil, no milk, no lentils. But you had flour and water. So you made bread, plain, unadorned. You baked it slow, over a low flame. And when it was done, you ate the entire loaf, alone, with water from the jar. And it felt like ceremony, like forgiveness. Sometimes at night you dream of fields of grain, not to harvest, to run through, the stalks high, golden, rustling like whispers. You walk barefoot, your arms empty, your stomach full. No oven waits for you. No dough demands your hands. Just wind and the soft promise of rest. You wake up and knead again. The same motion, the same bowl, the same ache, because bread doesn't care how you feel. It only cares that you return. And you do. Every day. You return. And you rise. With it. You know the look. The one that spreads down a table like slow fire. One person passes. Another glances at their bowl. A third pushes away their bread. Then silence. And then the whisper. Sharp as a knife. Something's wrong. Your heart skips. Not from guilt. From memory. Because you've seen what follows, and it never starts with questions. It starts with suspicion. Food is life. Until it isn't. Until it turns. Until something that once smelled right carries an edge of rot, of mildew, of sourness masked by spice. You've seen it happen. Not often, but enough. Enough to learn how quickly gratitude turns to blame. You remember the first time it happened in your kitchen, not because of laziness, because of heat. The stew was left on the coals too long, not burned, just settled. The fat separated, the beans fermented. It was early summer. You didn't smell it in time. The guest who ate first, he coughed, paused, and said nothing. Later that night, he vomited outside the gates. And the next day, you were summoned. No one shouted. That's the worst part. They simply asked, "What did you serve?" You listed it. Every item, every measure. You told them how long it cooked, what wood you used, how fresh the lentils were. They listened, then dismissed you. You weren't punished. Not openly. But for weeks, the overseer refused to eat anything you prepared. Another girl reheated your food before it reached the table. They didn't say why. They didn't have to. You knew. Food turns quickly in this land. The heat helps. So does time. So do flies. You've learned to cover everything. To cool the pots before storing. To boil water twice if the wind smells like mildew. You throw out more than you used to, quietly, without permission. It's safer that way. But you can't control everything. The flour arrives spoiled. The meat hides bruises. The fish carries parasites you can't see, even under good light. And when someone falls ill, the question always finds its way back to you. Not directly, but in the glances. In the tightened voices, in the untouched trays. There are herbs you use now, not for flavor, for protection. A leaf of mint in the water jug, a pinch of fennel in anything raw, a smear of sour beer on the pot's rim to keep flies away. They aren't foolproof, but they help. Sometimes. There was a week, last flood season, when half the house had cramps. You didn't sleep. You stayed near the fire, boiling rice into gruel, mixing ash and salt and lemon peel into small remedies. You brought bowls to the doorsteps, never entering. And when the sickness passed, no one thanked you. But the bowls came back empty, and that was enough. Sometimes the danger isn't the food. It's what they imagine is in it. You've heard the murmurs. She looked at the overseer too long. She was stirring the pot while whispering. They say she has herbs that numb the tongue. Fear makes people foolish. And in the kitchen, fear can kill faster than spoiled fish. You keep your head down. You stir with both hands visible. You never work in silence when others are near. Because silence feeds suspicion, and suspicion poisons more than bread. There was a girl once, Nahet. She was clever, faster than you. She made a salad that made the ladies smile. For weeks, you worked side by side. Then someone fell ill, and they blamed her. Said she used bad vinegar. Said she left the dish uncovered. You didn't see her again. The salad bowl she used still sits on the high shelf. You haven't touched it since, not out of fear, out of respect. You've developed a second sense. The moment a dish begins to turn, the faint change in smell, the way the oil sits wrong on the surface, the sound of bubbling that's just too loud, too insistent. You listen, you taste, you decide. Sometimes you discard food while others sleep. They'll ask where the dish went. You'll lie, say you dropped it, say a cat got in. It's easier than explaining that you were protecting them. From food, from blame, from yourself. Even now, after years without an incident, you live with the fear. It wakes you, it follows you. You chew slowly, watching your own body for signs. You eat last, not out of duty, out of caution. If you fall sick, at least it wasn't them. At least you'll know first. When someone coughs at the table, your chest tightens. When they push a plate aside, your heart stutters. When they look at the bowl as if seeing it for the first time, you start rehearsing your defense. Just in case. You shouldn't have to. But that's what it means to be the cook. To feed is to risk. Every day, every meal. And still you keep cooking. Not out of love, out of ritual, out of necessity. Out of the strange truth that while food may turn, your hands never do. They keep stirring. Keep feeding. Keep protecting. Even in silence, even under suspicion. Even in the shadow of illness. Because someone must. And today, like always, that someone is you. You can smell yourself before anyone else does. It happens quietly, like waking from sleep to realize the world has already moved on. You raise your arm to lift a pot, and there it is, the scent of onion, of smoke, of oil burned once too often. It clings, not like perfume, not like something chosen, like a second skin fused to your first. No matter how much you wash, it never fully leaves. You scrub with soap made from ashes and fat. You bathe when the house is quiet, using cold water and rough cloth. You rub mint under your arms and lemon on your fingers. But still it returns. Because the kitchen does not release its hold just because you stepped outside it. It follows. Always. They don't notice. Not really. They smell the food, not the cook. They compliment the spices, the bread, the stew. But if you pass them in the corridor, damp from work, they would wrinkle their noses. They wouldn't say it. But you'd see it. And so, you keep your distance, not out of humility, out of protection. Your clothes never smell like linen. They smell of effort, of firewood, of yeast and ash and old vinegar. You change often, but everything you own has spent too much time near the stove to be truly clean. Even your sleep cloth carries it. Even your hair. You tie your head before every shift, not just for cleanliness. To hide the scent of scalp soaked in smoke. Sometimes you untie it in secret when no one's near. Let the air find your skin again, just for a moment. Then you cover yourself once more. Because exposure is risk, and risk, for a cook, is luxury. When guests arrive, the house fills with perfumed women. Sandalwood, frankincense, rare oils from distant ports. You watch from behind the curtain as they pass. Their skin glows. Their scent lingers long after they leave. like wind that decided to smell sweet for once. You don't envy them. You just forget your own scent for a moment and wonder what it would feel like to be remembered not for flavor, but fragrance. There's a boy in the market who once said, "You smell like my mother's kitchen." He meant it kindly, but it made your chest tighten because it meant he could smell you from a step away. It meant the kitchen walked ahead of you, spoke before you did, told your story before your mouth opened. You've stopped using perfumes. Not that you had many. A flower once, tucked behind your ear. A bit of crushed basil. Gone by midday. Overpowered by fat and steam and garlic. Now you don't bother. You wear your scent like you wear your apron. Stained. Necessary. Familiar. Some nights, you bathe twice. Not to be clean. To feel different. Even for a moment. You scrub your arms until they glow red. You soak your feet, trying to imagine a version of yourself that doesn't smell like broth and burned dough. But when you lie down, your pillow tells the truth, and you sigh. Not with defeat, with recognition. There was a woman once, an old visitor from the north. She ate your food, then asked to see the kitchen. Rare, strange, but allowed. She walked through slowly, touching the clay, smelling the herbs. Then she turned to you and said, "You smell like home," and left. You never forgot it. Not because it was kind, because it made you question. Whose home? Whose memory did you carry on your skin? And did that memory love you back? The kitchen has its own perfume. It changes by the hour. In the morning, it's ash and flour. By noon, garlic and lentil. By night, the deep sweetness of simmered bones and old fire. It gets into your pores, your hair, your breath. You speak, and the scent leaves your mouth like a second language. Some girls try to fight it. They dab oils under their arms. They keep flowers near their workbench. It helps for an hour. Then the kitchen reminds them where they are. You learned long ago, better to embrace it, to let the scent settle, to become part of your presence. Not a flaw, a mark. You've had lovers, brief ones, secret ones, always hands in the dark, moments borrowed between shifts. They held you like they wanted you. But even they flinched sometimes. When they buried their face in your neck and found fire instead of flowers. Now you wrap your scarf tighter, walk faster, speak less, not ashamed, just tired of explaining, of disguising, of pretending your scent is anything other than what it is, the evidence of your labor, the proof of your place. But sometimes, on rare nights, you stand in the courtyard alone, the stars above, the kitchen quiet, and you breathe in deeply, the smell of roasted grain, of cooling clay, of herbs drying on twine, and you smile, because the scent is yours, no one else's. It belongs to no goddess, no noble, no guest, only you. And maybe in another life, someone would lean into you, inhale deeply, and say, "You smell like strength." You never considered yourself religious, not in the way priests define it. You don't speak to statues or burn incense in temples. You don't memorize hymns or wear charms openly. But if belief is repetition and ritual and faith in something beyond the visible, then maybe, just maybe, your kitchen is your altar and cooking is your prayer. Each morning begins with silence, not because the house is quiet, because your mind is. That silence is your offering, your pause, before the hands begin to move, before the water splashes, before the grain is ground. You close your eyes just for a breath and ask the day to be kind. Not out loud, not with words, just in the motion of lighting the fire without burning yourself. In the patience of waiting for the oil to shimmer before you drop the onions in. That's your temple. That's your faith. There are gods in this world. Too many to name. Some live in the river, some in the sky, some in scrolls that only scribes can read. But you've always believed that if any god knows your name, it's the one who watches over kitchens. Not the harvest god, not the one they celebrate in festivals with songs and painted masks. You mean the quiet one, the one who sees the burned fingers, the split nails, the sleepless eyes, the one who hears when no one else listens. If such a God exists, you hope they understand the smell of lentils. There's a corner in the kitchen where a single rock rests. You don't know who placed it there, but it's never moved. You place dried rosemary on it every week, lightly burned, not for smell, for memory. Your mother did the same. So did the woman before her. A ritual not spoken of, but past. The smoke curls upward, thin, soft, like a question you don't need answered. You've whispered to pots before, not requests, reassurances. It'll be okay. Hold together. Just another minute. And you've felt sometimes as if something responded. Not in sound, in outcome. The stew that thickened at the perfect moment. The bread that rose despite the cold. Coincidence? Maybe. But you take it as blessing. Sometimes in the dead of night, you wake in a sweat. Not from heat, from fear. A dream of burning, of food ruined, of hands pointing. You sit up, gasping. Your prayer then is simple. Let tomorrow be better. And you rise before the sun. Again. There was a girl once, younger than you are now. She hummed while she worked. Soft songs. Not from the temples, from her village. She said they were blessings. Each note keeps the bread from burning. You didn't believe her until the week she lost her voice and every loaf collapsed. You began humming after that, quietly, just under your breath. Even now you hum when you need, when you stir, when you wait. Your song changes with the day, but the intent is the same. Let the food nourish. Let the hands not fail. Let me be invisible when needed and remembered when necessary. There's a nail on the wall where a string of dried garlic hangs, not for cooking, for protection. Everyone knows it. No one touches it. It watches over the door, over the flame, over you. You don't worship it, but you greet it like a friend. Once during a storm, lightning struck nearby. The fire refused to light. The dough wouldn't rise. The whole house felt wrong. You made a stew with only lentils, salt, and water. Offered the first bowl to the ground behind the stove. The next day, the fire returned. You said nothing, but you left a second bowl, just in case. You've seen others pray aloud, before meals, after them, thanking gods for the hands that cooked. They don't mean you, but you still listen. You accept it. Not as thanks, as echo. You believe in rhythm, in the sacred weight of repetition, in actions so practiced they become sacred. A chopped onion is more than preparation. It's sacrifice. Oil sizzling is not just chemistry, it's testimony. Bread rising, resurrection. Every dish you serve is a psalm, even if no one reads it that way. The gods of the temples want gold, incense, obedience. The gods of the kitchen, they want salt, heat, stillness, and your trust. You've given all three. And in return, you survive. Once, when you were very young, you tried to write a prayer. You didn't have papyrus. You scratched it into the dirt behind the oven. Just 3 words. Let it rise. You covered it with your foot when someone passed. Later, the bread that day was perfect. You never wrote another. You didn't need to. You were already writing every day. And flour and smoke and taste. Now, when you stand before the pot, ladle in hand, fire warm at your ankles, you feel it. A quiet presence, not watching, not judging, just waiting for the food, for the moment, for your small sacred ritual to begin again. And so you stir, and you whisper, and you serve, and maybe, somewhere, something listens. A visita da morte, discreta como fumaça. In a house like this, death does not knock. It enters quietly, like steam escaping a closed lid. No warning, no ceremony, just absence. One day, someone is there, eating, laughing, shouting about salt. And the next, the bowls sit untouched. You don't see the body. That's not your place. You just feel the silence it leaves behind. You always know before they tell you. The signs are subtle, but you've learned them. Bread left half-baked in the morning. Curtains closed before midday. Voices too soft in the corridor. And the sound, the real sound of it, is not crying. It's the lack of orders, the lack of appetite. The kitchen holds its breath, and so do you. They never tell the cook first, but they expect you to adapt instantly, to understand that today there will be no lentils, no stews, no bread rising by the hour. Instead, there will be tea and silence and dishes that can be eaten without thought. Grief is hungry, but it eats differently. The first time it happened, you were confused. The overseer's brother died in his sleep. Peacefully, they said. You were handed a tray and told to make something simple. What is simple in mourning? You made a thin soup, bread cut in soft rounds, figs arranged carefully. You placed the tray in the hallway. No one touched it. You took it back. You waited. And then you understood. Today, food is not to nourish. Today, food is to remember. You've learned what people want when grief comes. Warm things, mild flavors. No garlic, nothing red, nothing too sweet. You prepare it all without asking. Without being asked, you wrap the bread in cloth to keep it soft. You pour tea gently to avoid the sound. You let the kitchen hum just enough to mask the quiet sobs outside the door. And when they finally eat, hours later, hands trembling, you say nothing. But you know, this meal matters more than any feast, because grief has a hunger all its own. Sometimes the dead are old, expected. The house mourns but continues. Sometimes they are young, and everything stops. Even you. You still cook. You still stir. But your hands are slower. You forget the salt. You burn the bottom of the pot. You taste, and everything feels wrong. Not from flavor, from feeling. Because the girl who used to laugh when the dough stuck to her fingers is gone. Because the boy who asked for extra dates won't again. Because absence is louder than orders. And grief doesn't eat alone. It dines with memory. There are rules you follow in mourning. No music in the kitchen. No laughter. No spices that remind people of joy. You pack away the saffron. You avoid coriander. You cook like a shadow of yourself. And it's appropriate, because they don't want you bright today. They want comfort, familiarity, softness. You can give them that. even when you feel none of it yourself. Once, a woman of the house died in childbirth. You didn't know her well, but you remembered her hands, delicate, always cold. You made bread the next day, warm, flat, with honey in the centers. You didn't serve it. You left it on the windowsill. For no one, for her. It was gone by morning. Some say that food made in morning tastes different. You believe it. Not because grief changes your ingredients, because it changes you, your breath, your rhythm, your patience. Every dish becomes slower, heavier, more deliberate. You stir not to feed. You stir to hold something steady while everything else falls apart. There are things you do not serve when someone dies. Boiled eggs, too whole. Fish, too fragile. Fresh fruit, too alive. You serve things that remind people of staying, of grounding, of surviving the day, even if just barely. You've prepared meals for grieving parents, for sobbing siblings, for elders who sit silently and do not speak for days. And each time you enter the kitchen with the same quiet question, what can I give them that will not offend the silence? The answer is always the same. Something warm, something soft, something that asks nothing of the teeth. Because when grief swallows you, chewing feels like work. Sometimes they say, thank you. Most times they don't. You don't expect it. You aren't there to be seen. You're there to ensure the world doesn't stop turning. That something, somewhere, stays hot, stays constant, stays whole. Even if it's only a bowl of rice. You grieve too. Not for the same people, but for the stories you won't cook for anymore. For the girl who always asked for more honey. For the man who salted everything and smiled when you pretended not to notice. For the old woman who hummed as she passed the kitchen. They never knew your name, but you knew theirs. And now, your pots remember. After the morning ends, the house fills again. With noise, with appetite, with demands. But you never quite return to how things were. You still reach for an extra cup that no one drinks from. You still make too much porridge. You still hesitate at the door of the room that now stays closed. Grief lingers in habit. And your hands carry memory better than any song. So you keep cooking. With tenderness. With reverence. With the quiet understanding that every meal might be the last one someone remembers. Not for its flavor, but for who was there and who wasn't. No one taught you, not with words, not with lists, not with scrolls or diagrams or soft instruction. You learned by watching, by copying, by failing quietly, by being punished once and never again. Now the time has come for you to teach. And you wonder, how do you pass on a skill that lives in silence? There is a girl, young, too young, really. Thin wrists, eyes always scanning but never meeting yours. She was sent to help, but you know what that means. It means she'll do what she's told, and you'll be blamed for her mistakes, unless you teach her. And quickly. She doesn't speak much. You don't blame her. She doesn't trust this place yet. Doesn't know the rhythm. Doesn't know which crack in the wall means don't step there, or which bowl to never touch. So you show her. Not with lectures, with gestures, with glances. You move slowly when she's nearby. You let her watch your hands. You nod when she mimics correctly. You correct only with touch, a tap on the wrist, a pause before she spoons too much. No scolding. That was done to you, and you swore you'd never pass that part on. Her first loaf is too dry. You don't comment. You take it from the oven before it burns. Later, you show her how to press the dough with her palm, not her fingers. You let her feel yours. Warm, firm, practiced. You say, your hands will learn, and that is enough. She burns herself on the clay pot. She gasps, looks to you. You nod. You pour cool water over the mark, wrap it, and then go back to work. She follows. That is how you know she'll be fine. There's a moment, weeks in, when she stirs the lentils without being told. The pot simmers evenly. You watch from the corner, say nothing. But inside, something softens. She's learning, the way you did, through repetition, through rhythm, through the language of heat and patience. She asks you one night while stacking herbs, how do you know what they want? You shrug, then say, listen to what they leave on the plate. She frowns, then nods. She'll understand in time. You don't tell her everything. Not yet. Some things must be earned. The spot where fire burns too hot, the ladle that always leaks, the bowl that cracks under pressure. She must discover them. And when she does, she will know them deeply, not as warnings, but as truths. You remember your own first mentor. Barely. She was stern, silent. Her approval came in clean hands and unburnt rice. Her punishment was absence. When she left, no one said goodbye. Just handed you the apron. Now, you try to be better. Not softer. Better. The girl begins humming as she works. You let her, it helps. You don't hum yourself anymore. But her voice carries the air in ways your silence never could. And that's good. The kitchen needs both. Noise and quiet. Youth and memory. She asks questions now. Not many, but real ones. Why do we burn the garlic first? To soften bitterness. Why do we soak the rice twice? To trick it into tenderness. You don't always answer with facts. Sometimes you answer with stories, and sometimes with silence, because not every truth fits in words. Some must be tasted. You show her the herb corner. She doesn't laugh at the old garlic string. Good. You give her one task. Choose a new plant to hang. She brings basil. Sharp, bright, a good choice. You nod. You don't smile, but she sees it. When she burns the stew one morning, she cries. You take the spoon. Taste it. It's bitter, but not ruined. You mix in cumin, a dash of lentil water, a whisper of lemon. The bitterness retreats. You hand her the spoon. Let her taste. You can always recover if you act fast, you say. She repeats the sentence as if it were a spell. Maybe it is. There's pride in watching her move now. Not confidence, not yet, but presence. She knows where to stand, which pot to use, when to ask, and when to trust her hands. You step back. Let her handle the midday prep. You pretend to sweep, but you watch. And the meal is good. Not perfect, but good. And no one complains, which in this house is the closest thing to praise. At night when the house sleeps, she whispers, "Thank you." You pretend not to hear, but you stay a little longer at the hearth, adding a bit more wood, letting the fire stay warm for her morning, just in case. You think about legacy now, not in grand terms, not in names carved or songs sung, just in skill, in memory passed quietly, in hands that shape bread the way yours once did, in eyes that scan the flame with the same care. That is your offering, not to gods, to the world, to the girl who will feed others long after your name is forgotten. You were never taught, but you learned. And now, so will she, not through fear, but through repetition, through heat, through trust and through you. You don't remember falling asleep. You never do. It just happens, like the last ember dying, like dusk sliding into night without ceremony. One moment you're sitting by the fire thinking about tomorrow's bread. The next, you wake with your chin on your chest, fingers curled like claws, your back aching in ways you can no longer name. Sleep doesn't ask your permission. It takes you when it's ready. And lately, it's been greedy. You used to fight it. Try to stay awake just a little longer. Finish the grinding. Clean the last bowl. Lay out the lentils for soaking. But your body has changed. It doesn't ask politely anymore. It shuts down. Quietly, firmly, wherever it pleases. Even if you're still in the middle of a task, even if the coals are still warm, they call it laziness. When you're caught, they see your eyes drooping and say, "She's tired again," as if tired were a sin, as if you chose it. You want to laugh, but you don't, because laughter takes breath. And sometimes, sleep is the only moment your body gets to feel light. The floor is familiar. You've dozed there before, near the basket of herbs, against the storage jars, once even on the flat stone used for rolling dough. You didn't mean to. You never mean to, but the ground is cool and solid. And after a day of bending and lifting and kneeling, it feels like a kind of mercy, even when it leaves your bones stiff for hours. You've tried finding better rest. You laid a cloth beneath your work table, folded your scarf to cradle your head. It helps, a little, but sleep in the kitchen is never full. There's always a creak, a cough, a shadow passing the doorway. You sleep like a guard, not protecting others, just study holding yourself together for another shift. You dream strange things, sometimes vivid, sometimes numb. You dream of rooms you've never seen, of bread that sings as it bakes, of fires that stay lit without fuel. You wake and wonder where you are, then smell the ash, feel the heat, hear the spoon clatter against clay, and know, you never really left. The worst sleep is when you're still holding something. A spoon, a bowl, a knife. You jolt awake when it drops. Your heart races. Your breath catches. You look around waiting for scolding, but the kitchen is empty. The world is quiet, and you're alone with your shame. For sleep you didn't ask for. You've learned to apologize before they speak, to say, "I'll make more," even if nothing was ruined, even if no one noticed. You speak it anyway, as a shield, as habit, as prayer. You've watched younger girls push themselves past the edge, eyes wide with fear, hands trembling over boiling pots. You want to tell them, sleep will take you whether you allow it or not. You can bow to it gently, or collapse, but you say nothing. They wouldn't believe you yet. They still think exhaustion is a flaw, not a companion. You keep a secret cloth under the bench, folded neatly, washed when you can. It's yours, just big enough for a short rest. You don't tell anyone. You use it when the night is too long, when your knees refuse to rise again. You lie there, eyes closed, body curled, listening to the quiet drip of cooling oil, and you breathe, just once, just enough. Sometimes you sleep sitting against the wall, head back, mouth open, and you wake to drool on your chin, to your name being called. Not kindly. You wipe your face, you stand, you serve, as if nothing happened. Once you slept through the morning fire. You woke with the hearth cold, The house already stirring. You didn't cry. You moved faster than you ever had. Lit the flame, ground the grain, kneaded the dough with sweat dripping into it. No one noticed. But your body remembered for days, in soreness, in shame, in the whisper that said, don't ever let that happen again. But you're not a machine. You bleed, you break, and sleep finds you whether you're ready or not. It finds you with flour on your hands, with your apron still tied, with your mind halfway through tomorrow's meal. It finds you, and for a moment, you vanish. You don't dream of beds anymore. Not real ones, not soft linen or cool sheets. You dream of stillness, of weightlessness, of silence. And that's enough. That's what sleep gives you, even in seconds. Even against a wall with your knees tucked and your hands still clutching a ladle. You once heard a story of a woman who slept for days after she left the kitchen. No one woke her. She rose when she was ready, cooked nothing, cleaned nothing, just rested. You wonder if it's true. You wonder if she dreamed of bread. For now, you rest when you can. A moment here, a breath there. You let sleep take you, sitting up, eyes half closed, body leaning against familiar walls. You wake with pain, but also with survival. And sometimes that's enough, because tomorrow will come, and you will stir the pot again. Even if you dreamed of never waking, morning always comes. No matter how poorly you slept, no matter how heavy your legs feel when you rise from the floor, brush ash from your tunic, and straighten your back with a quiet wince, the kitchen waits. And so, você acende o fogo again. The bread comes first. It always does. You know its rhythm better than your own. You don't need to measure anymore. Just look at the flour, feel it between your fingers, and know how much water it will need, how long to let it sit, when to knead, where to press. You do it all by instinct, by memory, by care. Because even if no one thanks you, the bread always responds. If you respect it, it rises. If you rush it, it turns to stone. Bread does not lie. As the dough rests, you begin the rest. The lentils, the herbs, the quiet. There is always quiet in the morning, before the others rise, before the orders begin. It's the only time the kitchen belongs to you, truly yours. And in that silence, the bread begins to smell like something sacred, not hunger, not labor, but warmth. That smell travels. It escapes through cracks in the wall, slips into corridors, weaves around door frames, finds sleeping mouths, and stirs them awake. They don't know it, but the first thing they feel when they open their eyes isn't the light or the breeze. It's the smell of your hands, of your patience, of your effort turned into heat. And for a moment, before they remember who they are or what they want, they remember they're hungry and they smile. You'll never see it, but you know it. You feel it in the way the bread disappears. The girl you train now wakes when you do. She lights her own fire, kneads her own dough. She sings softly. You listen. It's not your song, but it belongs here now. You taught her that much? To fill the kitchen with more than scent, to fill it with presence. You watch her sometimes, not out of pride, out of peace, because she doesn't need you for everything anymore. She still looks to you when unsure, still waits for your nod before serving something new. But her hands are steady, her feet know where to step, and one day soon, she won't need to look at all. And that will be a kind of gift. You're not done. You still cook, still serve, still carry. But you've stepped back a little. Let her take the morning shift. Let her receive the first comment, the first complaint. Let her feel the weight and wonder of being the one who feeds. It's hers now, not fully, but soon. Sometimes you rest your back against the cool wall and let your thoughts wander. Not far, just down the path of memory. To the first time you burned the bread. To the day you made the lentils just right. To the sound of your mother humming a tune you forgot, but still feel when your hands are deep in flour. You think of those who came before, of those who taught you by letting you watch, by letting you fail, by standing quietly beside you as the pot boiled over, then helping clean it without a word. And you wonder, did they feel the same ache in the bones? The same satisfaction in silence? The same strange love for a place that has never spoken your name? You don't need a statue. You don't need your face carved on a wall. The bread is your legacy. The scent is your prayer. The girl is your offering. And the kitchen, for all its burns and burdens, is your temple. One evening, as the sun leans low and the shadows stretch across the floor, the girl hands you a slice of bread. "Try it," she says. You do. It's warm, soft inside, crisp edge, seasoned just enough. You nod, and something inside you quiets. She smiles, and you remember what it felt like to wait for that nod. Long ago, when your hand still trembled. You rise slowly, stretch, let the warmth settle into your shoulders, and you realize you're tired, but not in pain. You're quiet, but not forgotten. You're older, but still here, still part of the rhythm, still part of the heat, still part of the smell. Because even when you leave this kitchen, even when another woman kneels to light the fire you once kept, the scent will remain. It will curl into the stones, settle into the wood, linger in the walls. And someone, years from now, will breathe it in and wonder who came before. And the answer will rise like steam. You. You were here. You fed them. You stayed. You endured. And the bread still rises because of you.